Captain, once that plane was on the floor of the desert, did you really ever expect to get it back?
We certainly had some hopes of this, so much so, at least in our own minds, that we had some help, of course, from the Jordanian uh, airlines. They came out, the president was out for a couple of 3 days there. We did have a ground power unit which recharged our battery, and we had hopes of, at least for a period of time, that we might get the airplane out of there.
Captain, what do you feel is being done now to prohibit this happening in the future?
They're doing quite a bit. The companies, the federal authorities, with these people that are being put on the airplanes as a deterrent to this sort of thing, plus the fact that the airlines and the authorities are all together on searching prior to departures, and there's quite a bit of schooling in this area going on. And matter of fact, the airlines, I imagine, are spending several dollars in this regard to try to make it safe for people to travel from point A to point B.
I couldn't, in all sincerity, spend the money for a bond election that, if won, I feel would not be a good investment for our community. I think it would. There's too many ifs. The economy is not as good. It's not as clear. It's not as clean as we'd like. Maybe after the election, maybe after January 1st, or sometime it's got to clear up. Right now, it's real foggy. I think I asked you a while ago if there was anything that you felt that you needed, that you're putting off because you didn't feel that now was the time to buy it. And I think this is true with us. We need it, but I don't think now's the time for us to do it at additional money, more than what we had anticipated.
This past year on April 18th in Austin, the demonstration, about 10,000 people. The head of the demonstration had a GI contingent, about 500 GIs headed it up.
I think when it encourages violence, when it encourages putting one's views ahead of the views of the others, establishing priorities that says to a guy, look, I don't like what you're doing and I'm going to use violence to change it. The country must defend itself against this kind of thing. Now, the majority of these things were peaceful, and of course people have the right to peacefully protest. Now, I remember back when just a few days ago, when President Nixon was here in Dallas, there was a demonstration of people kind of the theory bound and gagged protesting. I didn't like it. I didn't like what they were standing for. Didn't like their unfairness and not recognize that we are moving towards peace, but they have a right to do that. And I don't want to see the climate get such that they don't. They were peaceful and they did their thing, and many of these marches work that way. But the violent thing, I mean, we've got to draw the line at violence. So I have mixed emotions. My own view is I'm supporting the president as he tries to bring this war to a close.
Went to various different insurance groups in Dallas and Fort Worth, and somebody called down to Waco, and it seems that nobody wants to insure us because possibly they're afraid of the violence, you know, that the whole media seems to think that this is going to be a violent demonstration.
Now, Mr. Al Gringo.
Could not the Bill of Rights be added as a subtext of some sort and not be included in the bill, in the Constitution itself? I would not know about this, so I'm going to ask my parliamentarian.
He's got to sit down. Yeah, all right, stand up. That's Connecticut, though.
The raids began last night around 10 p.m. and centered around the IWF cemetery area located just a few blocks from the North Texas State campus. In this frame house, referred to by Sheriff Wiley Barnes as a hippie pad, 20 persons were arrested and a quantity of marijuana was seized. In another house, located just about a block away, the promoter of another proposed pop music festival was arrested. His bond was set at $100,000. Sheriff Barnes said that other charges were pending against the man. Today, defense attorney Cal Jackson of Dallas was busy bonding out many of the young people arrested last night during the raids. These were young men and women ranging in ages from 14 to 23 who gave addresses all over the United States. Sheriff Barnes described the raids in detail.
Came about when the Department of Public Safety in Austin sent their Division of Undercover Agents into Denton about 6 months ago.
You've been working on this ever since?
That's right.
Now, Sheriff, what sort of people were arrested in these raids?
Mostly hippies. I think we had out of the whole thing about 8 college students, or supposed to be college students. We don't know at this time whether they're still in college or whether they're dropouts.
Where did you find them?
Found them in majority of them in what we call hippie houses, where they rent these old houses here in Denton that no one else would rent. Throw their old mattresses and blankets on the floor, and that's the way they sleep. And they start dealing in drugs and peddle them to the college students.
Has there been quite a bit of drug peddling going on in the last few months?
Yes, sir.
About how much money would you say was involved in the racket? Would it be a multi-$1,000 racket?
I'd say here in Denton it would be several $1,000s.
I asked Justice of Peace Homer Skiles what he thought ought to be done with the young people.
Well, I don't know. They used to use a razor strap on us as we was kids growing up. Of course, we had to respect our family. We didn't want to do anything that would burn a good name. And I don't know whether it's parents, it's times, or it's just hard to say.
The heat is on. Sheriff Barnes, the city, and of course the state narcotics people will continue their raids until they have at least slowed down the flow of marijuana and hard drugs on the North Texas State campus. Art Sinclair, Channel 8 News on the Move, Denton.
The polls for absentee voting in next Tuesday's election are now closed. However, when I was up here at the county clerk's office earlier, there had been a record turnout of over 6,000 absentee votes cast in this off-year election. Earlier this week, County Clerk Tom Ellis had predicted a much smaller figure. Tom, why do you figure that there's been such a large turnout this election year?
Well, Carl, we think that the voters are interested in several issues. We have 7 amendments. To top the amendments, number 2 is a real interesting amendment, and it'll bring out voters on both sides. We have a state senatorial, a U.S. senatorial race. This is bringing out interest on both sides. The state governor's race is bringing out lots of interest. We have 15 legislators. We have several contested congressional districts. We have several county races, to include a county commissioner's race. So there's lots of things to be voted on. Maybe to top the list of county races is a sheriff's race. A lot of interest in the sheriff's race.
Now, if you had absentee ballots sent to you, be sure and get them in by Monday midnight. And if you haven't voted absentee, make sure to turn out Tuesday, November the 3rd. Carl Mayo, Channel 8 News.
Two hotly contested statewide races, that for Senator Yarborough's seat and the governor's office, has apparently contributed in breaking the absentee vote record in a non-presidential election year in Tarrant County. Chief Deputy County Clerk Ed Lofton gives an estimate of the final total absentee ballots.
I believe we'll have in the neighborhood of something like 3,000 total votes for the absentee poll.
How does this compare with the 1966 non-presidential election?
Well, 1966, we had 1,484, I'm sorry. We're roughly now, at the present time, about 850 ahead of 1966.
Full election coverage, statewide and nationwide, will be given on WFAA television Tuesday election night. Jim Green, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
The Commissioner's Court will be charged with the responsibility no later than Monday week of appointing successors to them.
Did either Mr. Box or Mr. Ginsburg give any indications as to why they resigned?
Well, I think it's the press of private business and the fact that the hospital board continually is taking more of their time, and that that's largely the reason.
Judge, there's some speculation that the resignations may have been brought about as a result of the current controversy over financing the improvements at the hospital district. Would you have any comments on this?
Oh, they would have to speak for themselves with regard to that. However, the hospital district has been in serious trouble, or headed toward that, since in July of 1969, that the Commissioners Court failed by a majority vote to adopt the recommendation, the unanimous recommendation, of the Board of Managers of the hospital district that we increase the tax rate by 11 cents.
We're quite concerned about the situation on Braniff at the present time. We've had more suspension and discharge cases in the past 6 months than we have in the past 6 years. It's largely due to the harassment and the pressure of the supervisors on the mechanics themselves to put the aircraft on the line. But I can assure the traveling public that our mechanics that we represent, the Machinists Union, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to maintain these aircraft in an airworthy condition and in accordance with FAA regulations and standards.
I have heard that regardless of the economic condition of the airline, the Braniff has 56 vice presidents, while Delta, which is a larger airline, has only 5 or 6.
According to our information, this is true. 56 vice presidents on the Braniff system. And you must keep in mind that Delta is a much larger carrier than Braniff. And to my knowledge, not one vice president on Braniff has been reduced. And yet the company preaches to us to cut costs.
Too often, people advocate a return to the principles of our founding fathers, but too few people realize what those principles actually were. The students at Sam Houston High School in Arlington are learning about those principles, about the founding fathers themselves, and about the underlying causes for the Constitution of the United States. The students are acting out the parts of delegates to that Constitutional Convention of 1787. The part of Ben Franklin is being played by John Ramone, a student at Sam Houston High School. I talked with John during the convention. Mr. Franklin, the delegates to this convention don't seem to like you very much. What are their reasons?
Well, we old men just don't seem to appeal to this younger generation.
Do you feel that you're surrounded by rebels?
Not actually. You must remember that our country was founded by rebels. And so I say anyone's opinion that differs with the norm is good as long as certain of us don't become violent.
Are you advocating a more conservative constitution?
I have tried to make a constitution where everyone would be happy by negotiating terms and compromising. I'm not sure whether they will compromise on a conservative form or a liberal. This is their opinion. I'm probably going to die soon anyway.
The students are debating the merits of the various articles of the Constitution as well as the merits of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to that Constitution. They're learning, they're having fun. Above all, they're being instilled with a sense of pride in that Constitution and in the country it helped found. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move in Arlington.